Imagine a group of islands so unique they changed our understanding of life itself, the Galápagos Islands. Floating in the Pacific off Ecuador, these volcanic islands are a living science lab, famous for inspiring Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. Here, nature is always experimenting, creating new forms of life adapted to harsh environments. Every plant and animal tells a story of survival and change. Among these is the wild Galápagos tomato, a humble plant at the center of a scientific mystery. Unlike its domesticated cousins, this tomato has adapted in surprising ways, challenging what we think we know about evolution. Our story begins with this small but mighty tomato, whose journey spans millions of years and reveals secrets about survival, change, and the future of our food. The Galápagos Islands have given us another evolutionary surprise, and it's a juicy one. Are the wild tomatoes of the Galápagos actually going back in time? Could these humble plants be reversing the evolutionary clock, bringing back traits that vanished millions of years ago? It might sound like something out of a science fiction novel, but this is a real question that scientists are now asking. The story unfolding in the Galápagos is stranger and more fascinating than fiction. In the world of biology, evolving backwards means a species redevelops traits it lost long ago, almost like finding an old key in a dusty drawer and discovering it suddenly fits a brand new lock. It's a rare phenomenon, but it does happen. For a long time, scientists believed evolution was a one-way street. Once a trait was lost, it was gone forever, erased from the genetic playbook. Even Charles Darwin, who studied these islands, thought evolution only moved forward. But now, the wild tomatoes of the Galápagos are challenging that old idea, forcing scientists to rethink what's possible in evolution. These tomatoes are reactivating a chemical defense system their ancient ancestors once used, a trait scientists thought had disappeared forever. It's as if the plants are reaching back into their evolutionary history and pulling out an old trick. What's truly remarkable is that this change isn't visible on the outside. The tomatoes look the same, but deep inside the fruit at the molecular level, they're producing chemicals that haven't been seen in these plants for ages. Millions of years ago, wild tomatoes were bitter and even toxic, using these chemicals to ward off hungry animals and survive in a harsh environment. Over time, as humans domesticated tomatoes, they bred them to be sweeter and more palatable, gradually losing those bitter defensive traits. But now, some Galápagos tomatoes are turning bitter again. This suggests that the genetic instructions for these ancient traits were never truly lost. They were just dormant, waiting for the right environmental trigger to switch back on. The Galápagos tomato is both a living fossil and a modern marvel, a plant that bridges the past and the present. It's a vivid reminder that evolution's playbook is far more flexible and surprising than we ever imagined. This is a real-life scientific mystery, unfolding right now in one of the world's most extraordinary places, a story that challenges everything we thought we knew about the rules of evolution. To truly understand the Galápagos tomato's secret, we first need to explore the fascinating world of alkaloids. These are the plant's own chemical weapons, crafted over millions of years of evolution. Alkaloids are not just random chemicals. They are a sophisticated defense system, helping plants survive in some of the harshest environments on Earth. You've probably encountered alkaloids in your daily life without even realizing it. Caffeine in your morning coffee, nicotine in tobacco, and the fiery capsaicin in chili peppers are all part of this powerful and diverse chemical family. These compounds can stimulate, protect, or even intoxicate, depending on their structure and the species that produces them. Plants don't make alkaloids for our benefit. Instead, they produce these bitter and sometimes toxic compounds to defend themselves from hungry animals, insects, and even microbes. The bitterness acts as a warning, and in some cases, the toxicity can be deadly, ensuring that only the most determined creatures dare to take a bite. In tomatoes, the most important alkaloids are known as steroidal glycoalkaloids, or SGAs. These unique molecules are especially potent, giving wild tomatoes their characteristic bitterness and protective edge. Ancient wild tomatoes were absolutely packed with these bitter SGAs, making them tough, unpalatable, and nearly impossible to eat raw. This was nature's way of keeping most animals, including early humans, at bay. Over thousands of years, as humans began to domesticate tomatoes, we selected for sweeter, juicier fruits, gradually breeding out most of these chemical defenses. The result? Modern tomatoes that are delicious, but far less protected. Today's tomatoes are a staple in kitchens worldwide, but their sweetness and lack of bitterness come at a cost. they're now much more vulnerable to pests and diseases. Wild Galapagos tomatoes, on the other hand, never went through this process of domestication. Isolated on remote islands, they had to fend for themselves against a unique set of challenges. For a long time, scientists believed even these wild tomatoes had evolved to be milder, but recent discoveries reveal a surprising twist. Some populations are actually ramping up their chemical defenses, producing more alkaloids than ever before. On certain islands, these tomatoes are now producing ancient super bitter alkaloids, a chemical throwback that harks back millions of years, offering a glimpse into the evolutionary arms race between plants and their predators. It's a remarkable return to an old recipe for survival, showing just how resilient and adaptable wild tomatoes can be in the face of nature's challenges. The Galapagos Islands are a chain of volcanic islands, scattered across the Pacific Ocean, each one shaped by fire and time. Every island is unique, with its own microclimate and ecosystem, creating a living laboratory for evolution. The older eastern islands, like San Cristobal, have had centuries for their volcanic rock to break down into rich, fertile soil. Here, rain is more plentiful, and lush vegetation thrives. Tomatoes growing in this environment are milder, with less of the bitter alkaloids that can make wild tomatoes unpalatable. The gentle climate means these tomatoes don't need strong chemical defenses. In contrast, the younger western islands, such as Isabela, are much harsher. The land is drier, rockier, and the soil is thin. Only the toughest plants survive here, and water is scarce. Life clings to the edges, and every plant must fight to survive. On these tough islands, tomatoes face relentless pressure from hungry herbivores like the giant Galapagos tortoise and the marine iguana. With so few plants available, these animals turn to wild tomatoes as a crucial food source. To survive this onslaught, the tomatoes have reactivated their ancient chemical defenses, ramping up the production of super bitter alkaloids. These chemicals make the fruit less appealing to hungry mouths, giving the plant a fighting chance. This natural experiment, unfolding over thousands of years, reveals how the environment can drive evolution in unexpected directions. The islands themselves become a stage for adaptation and change. On the western islands, being one of the few available food sources in a barren landscape forced tomatoes to dig deep into their genetic past. They revived old survival strategies, unlocking traits that had been dormant for generations. The result is a stunning example of evolution taking an unexpected path, reviving ancient defenses to meet modern challenges. These tomatoes are tougher, more resilient, and uniquely adapted to their harsh home. It's a tale of two islands and two very different tomatoes. One mild and gentle, the other rugged and bitter, each shaped by the land they call home. The environment, not just the passage of time, is the true sculptor of evolution's path. It can push life to innovate, adapt, or even reach back into its ancient genetic toolbox. The Galapagos tomatoes prove that sometimes survival means looking backward, rediscovering old solutions to face new threats. Nature's challenges can bring ancient solutions back to life, reminding us that evolution is not always about moving forward, but sometimes about remembering the past. How does a plant remember how to make a chemical its ancestors made millions of years ago? The answer lies in its DNA. The key is a tiny change in a gene controlling an enzyme called GAME8. Enzymes are like tiny machines, building or breaking down molecules. In most tomatoes, GAME8 produces milder alkaloids. But in the bitter Galapagos tomatoes, a small mutation in the GAME8 gene changes the enzyme's function. This tweak reactivates the ancient pathway, leading to the production of super bitter alkaloids. It's like flipping a genetic switch. One small mutation, one giant leap backward. The genetic potential for these ancient compounds was never lost, just hidden, waiting to be reawakened. Evolution can be efficient. Sometimes it reuses old solutions instead of inventing new ones. Discovering this genetic change was just the start. Scientists needed proof it was true reverse evolution. They mapped the tomato family tree, analyzing DNA from modern wild and Galapagos tomatoes. They confirmed the bitter alkaloids were an ancient trait, lost in most modern tomatoes. The Western Island tomatoes weren't ancient holdouts. They were closely related to the milder Eastern tomatoes. This meant the bitter trait had re-evolved, not just persisted. Scientists pinpointed the GAME8 gene mutation and even inserted it into mild plants. Those plants started making bitter compounds. The evidence was clear. A tiny mutation had revived a long-lost defense, proving evolution can circle back. Reverse evolution sounds dramatic, but it's not about rewinding time. The Galapagos tomato is still a modern plant. It's just reactivated a single ancestral trait. Think of evolution as a tinkerer, not an engineer. Sometimes, the best solution is an old tool from the back of the drawer. This challenges Darwin's law, the idea that evolution is irreversible. Darwin believed once a complex trait was lost, it couldn't return. But the Galapagos tomato shows that if the genetic instructions aren't erased, just silenced, a small mutation can bring them back. Complex organs may not re-evolve, but simpler traits controlled by a few genes can make a comeback. Evolution isn't always a straight line forward. Sometimes it loops back to old solutions when the environment demands it. The Galapagos tomato is proof that nature's workshop is full of surprises. The Galapagos tomato isn't alone. Nature is full of examples where old traits reappear. Stick insects lost their wings, but some species re-evolved them when flight became useful again. The genes for wings weren't lost, just turned off, waiting for the right moment. In frogs, most lost their lower teeth over 200 million years ago, but one species, Gastrotheca guntheri, re-evolved them. Even cattle sometimes show ancient coat patterns, atavisms, revealing hidden genetic recipes from their wild ancestors. These cases show that evolution can reach into the past for solutions. Old traits can re-emerge when they become useful again. Nature's toolkit is vast, and sometimes the best answer is an ancient one. The Galapagos tomato is just one example of evolution's surprising flexibility. Sometimes looking backward is the best way forward. Why does a bitter wild tomato matter? This discovery reshapes our understanding of evolution. Evolution isn't a straight line. It can circle back, picking up old tools when needed. For agriculture, this is huge. Modern tomatoes are tasty but fragile, bred for sweetness, not toughness. The Galapagos tomato shows that natural pest resistance genes are still out there. Scientists could use this knowledge to breed crops that defend themselves, reducing the need for chemical pesticides. Imagine tomatoes that are delicious to us but naturally unappealing to pests. These lessons could help create more resilient, sustainable crops: potatoes, eggplants, peppers, and more. The wild genes from the Galapagos could be key to our food's future. This story is a reminder. Every wild species is a library of solutions, and losing them means losing options we may desperately need. Nature's wisdom is hidden in the wildest places. It's up to us to protect and learn from it.